Great to have you listening in today. As with previous seasons, it is my hope that the guests and their stories that I get to share with you this season can provide you with the tools and or insights that you need to know that you can make it through whatever is happening for you now. And not only that, that you can have the life you want in whatever way you want that to look like. So let's get to it. I'm your host, Helen Morris, and this is The Beautiful Side of Grief. What I've discovered throughout my own journey of healing is that some of the best therapists, coaches, counselors, grief experts are the ones who have definitely walked the walk. They know what it is to feel unsafe, to feel shame, to have no hope for the future, and to have gone through the unimaginable. My guest in this episode is a lovely, vibrant Contessa Akin, who is a highly certified life coach and, in her words, the best emotional wellbeing coach there is.
That's me.
She has coached close to 1,000 women over the past 14 years and uses the tools from her traumatic past to teach and help others. To give you a brief sense of what she's gone through, she has experienced parental abandonment as a toddler, sexual trauma, emotional abuse, which led to a slew of self-sabotage. She has learned and grown from these experiences and continues to self-reflect and do her own personal work. The intention I'm setting for this show is to help you understand that it is possible to harness your trauma and all your grief, deal with it, and turn it into hope. Hope that you can survive what you're going through. Hope that you can be happy again. Hope that you are deserving and worthy of feeling this and so much more. Even if you're in a place right now where you can't imagine how this could be even remotely possible, trust that after listening to Contessa, that this will indeed be possible for you. And as always, I'm sending my love to you, and I want you to know that it is no accident that you are here and now listening in, and you have our heartfelt thanks for doing so. Hello, Contessa. It's so good to be with you today.
Oh my gosh, like hearing you talk about me, I don't know why, I just got all emotional for some reason.
I often hear people say that when I read back to them about themselves, sometimes they forget everything they've been through and just what an amazing job that they're doing.
And like it was almost like a reflection moment of really just how far I have come. It's kind of crazy.
Yes. Yes, and you're just doing amazing work now. So be warned, I have loads of questions for you because I think that you epitomize what it is to be a survivor who is thriving. And so I want to dig and delve into that as much as possible so that we can sort of come up with lots of things that can just help whoever's listening and just give them that ding-ding moment.
I love it. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start with giving our listeners some context to what you've been through and what it was like for you to grow up in the environment you did and to have the experiences you did. And that will just give us a really good foundation for just how far you've come and why it's so important you're doing what you're doing now.
Okay, I like to kind of start off with Cliff Notes versions, and if anything stands out to you can just stop me and we'll dive in anywhere you want to dive in.
That sounds good to me.
So at 3 years old, I was abandoned with my 2-year-old sister on the side of a highway here in Dallas, Texas by my biological mother, and she drove away from us. Okay, this is kind of I know it's a bad story, but it's a fun story too. So there was a motorcycle police officer. I remember we're on the side of the road and there was a motorcycle police officer who had my sister and I in the median and was giving us teddy bears and stickers because they had called my father to come pick us up. We can circle back around to that because that really is a fun story. At 6 years old, I was raped by a stranger and that was facilitated by the biological mother. Let's see, from 9 to 11, I was sexually abused by a stepbrother. He liked to stop my breathing and bring me back to life and then sexually abuse me. Like to play God in my life. And let's see, I went into the military. I was a jet engine mechanic in the military and basically worked around nothing but men. I came out of the military and really started a depression downward spiral for me. Just like for most people who get out of the military, you have this entity that tells you who to be and what to do and how to be. And then all of a sudden you're without that. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. So you don't have that training wheels anymore, right? Yeah. So I started kind of a downward spiral, and I moved around a bit after I got out, and I landed in Dallas, Texas, working at a motorcycle shop, which is where I met my now husband, who at the time was a motorcycle police officer. See?
I read this story. It's so cool.
It is so fun because actually when I took him to meet my parents, they were telling a story because, from trauma, I was a bit of a rebellious, out of control teenager, and I had gotten picked up by the police when I was 16. It just so happened to be my now husband who was the police officer who picked me up when I was 16. So, and we didn't meet until years later after I had been through the military and moved around the world and all kinds of fun stuff before we met and we got married. So that's the fun part of the story.
That is so cool, isn't it? Just how life works. And there's something really important about that because, and you mentioned this a lot, especially when I was reading about you, that going through like such immense trauma as you've been, you tend to just blank out stuff, don't you? You forget the details, which is why you wouldn't have remembered perhaps meeting him.
Yes. Yeah. I did not remember meeting him at all. Yeah. So it's fun because sometimes when I'm mad at him now, I'm like, well, I can't stay mad too long. Clearly, there's a purpose. There's synchronicity there. There's divine intervention. There's all kinds of reasons, right? I can blame it on. So I don't stay mad at him for too long. So he's lucky there. But but because of the sexual trauma, I was told at a very young age I would never be able to have kids. And then I was pregnant for the first time and immediately was like in a state of shock because I didn't think I could even have kids. My son was born and postpartum depression was almost instant. And 4 months later, I was pregnant again with my daughter. So I was already in a state of depression. Yeah, I was already in a state of depression right from coming out of the military, had met my husband, got pregnant, was in a state of shock. Had my firstborn, went into postpartum depression. 4 months later, I was pregnant again with my daughter and she was born and I was pretty much like depleted. And then it was 6 months later, I was pregnant with my third child. And my third child is no longer with us on the face of this particular earth. And so I hit rock bottom. And from there,
so that was your pivotal moment. That was where everything came crashing down on you and you needed to find a different way of doing stuff.
Yeah, in the moment, I really was at rock bottom and I was suicidal. I was 2 weeks away from taking my own life. I had a plan. I had a date. Basically, all I was doing was training my husband on how to take care of the kids and what was necessary in the household, right? Like I was passing the reins over to him. And, he's a police officer. So I ended up on suicide crisis hotline one day. He sat down on the couch next to me and handed me the phone. And it was suicide crisis hotline. And I was so angry. I was so mad at him. Part of my story to justify taking my life was that I was invisible and nobody seen me, nobody cared. And for him to hand me the phone meant that he see me. So I couldn't buy into that story. I couldn't use that story anymore as a means for justification. But really, ultimately, I was incredibly sad. I was in a state of grief and depression and postpartum depression. Like there was the trauma that I hadn't ever dealt with or ever confronted. It just felt like like a boulder that was sitting on me. And that really the best way out was to take my own life because in that state, I wasn't good for anybody.
And so what I often find is that when somebody goes through such a huge grief event like you've been through with losing your son on top of everything else, what that is like a Pandora's box opening up and everything else that you've ever been to kind of raises its head here and there and it just becomes this whole mess of stuff to deal with, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And it's overwhelming.
Yeah. So share with us how losing your son made you feel unworthy.
Well, because I couldn't protect him, right? There was the stuff that I was telling him, why I couldn't protect him. I wasn't good enough for him, right? Like, and there was this sense of responsibility that it was my fault, that I was to blame because of it all. And like, I mean, there was all kinds of stuff that I was telling myself as a result. But the problem is that before that event, I had already thought that I was unworthy, right? Like if you go all the way back to when I
Yes.
was 3 years old, basically, I thought I was unworthy of love, unworthy of care, unworthy of consideration because I was just discarded like a piece of trash by my own biological mother. And
Yeah.
so at this time when I lost my son, basically, it's just more validation. It was just like the icing on the cake that was the proof that was needed to justify like, yeah, see, you don't deserve to even be here on the face of this planet. So yeah, there.
So it was really key that you had this incredible person by your side, recognizing the signs that you were not in a good place, that you were not in a good space, and your thoughts were all over the place, and to call the crisis hotline and then to give you the phone. Because probably if he said to you, you need to call them, you wouldn't
I
have.
would have never
So
called
he
him.
did. Yes, exactly. So tell us how that changed your life, that phone call. What did that
Oh
do for
my
you?
gosh, yeah, that phone call. Look, I can't tell you the name of the person on the phone. I know she told me her name, but really what happened in that moment, he handed me the phone and instantly I could feel like my body was flooded with anger. Like, and what was
Hmm.
pivotal about that moment is because I had gone through disconnecting from the things around me, from my kids, from my husband, from myself, from just feeling anything at all. So to have
Yeah.
this flood of emotion like connected me back to a sense of reality, if you will.
Yeah.
And so there I am on the phone, like super confused because I'm flooded and feeling this connection to just feeling in general. And I'm angry. I'm so angry. I just want to like reach out and just punch him right in the face. I was so angry at him. I can't
You
tell you
didn't do
everything.
that though, did you?
No, I didn't.
Good.
I wanted to so bad. But in the moment, I really can't tell you everything that was said. But the things that stood out to me was she asked me, "Are you suicidal?" And I was like, "We're on the phone, so yeah." Like, I mean, I was expressing my anger. I wasn't hesitant about that. And
Yeah.
then the one question that she asked me that really was the shifting point for me is she asked me, "What is my plan?" I had a plan. I had a very definitive plan. I had a date. I had it all down pat, right? I knew what was
Hmm.
happening. But in that moment when she asked me what was my plan, I had this like dual conversation happening in my head with myself, right? One part was like, you can't tell her your plan because if you tell her your plan, then she's going to tell your husband and he's going to take away the plan, right? I
Right.
don't want
Right.
that to happen. And so it'd feel out of my control and I'd have to come up with something else. But then the other layer of conversation that was actually happening was if I say, yes, I have a plan, then I'm also admitting, yes, this is finite. This is happening. I'm committed
Yeah.
to it. Ain't nothing you can do about it. Right. And then on
Yeah.
the other side of that, if I say no, then I'm committing to not following through on the plan. So it was like this, like several layers of conversation that was happening in my brain at the same time. And I was so acutely aware of it. And at the moment, literally, my son had pulled himself, he was just a year at the time, had pulled himself up on my right leg. My daughter just barely like pulling herself up on my left leg. And
Hmm.
then there's my husband over to my left. And I'm like, everybody that I literally care about is right there clinging on to me. And so there was so much
Yes.
like metaphor and stuff wrapped up into that as well. And so I'm having this conversation in my brain and I decided I'm going to say no. So I said no. Don't know what happened after that. Couldn't even tell you probably what happened for the next 2 weeks. But there was a point where I decided where in my brain I had said no. So now what?
So the saying of no was actually you deciding that you weren't going to go ahead and follow through on that. Is that
Right.
correct?
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And then what?
Yeah. And now what? Now I've actually
Mm,
said, okay, now I'm not gonna leave this earth what the hell am I supposed to do now? I don't know who to be
Yeah.
or how to be. I'm still in a state of depression. I still have all this burden and heaviness and weight that I'm carrying around, and shame and guilt and all kinds of stuff that I'm carrying with me, right? From trauma
Hmm.
and everything. So, what am I supposed to do with myself now? Sure, I said no, but now what?
And that is the place that people get stuck in, isn't it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's all very well to admit that you need help,
Yep. But now what?
but
What does that
what does
mean?
that look like?
Yeah.
Yeah, where do I
Yeah.
go for it?
Yeah. So the funny thing for me is I just followed my intuition. I didn't like do a lot of searching online. I didn't do a lot of reaching out for help. I didn't do any of that stuff. What I did is I actually started just attending, like real estate seminars, or just ridiculous like convention stuff that I could go to for free,
Yep,
just for the sheer just being in a different environment
yep.
other than my home walls, right? Because that's where I spent most of my time, because I was raising two babies,
Hmm.
and also because they were saying things that was different from what I was telling myself.
Okay, so what you were doing was like taking yourself out of your space that
Mm-hmm.
you were familiar with, not necessarily
Comfortable in.
comfortable with,
Well, I was
not yeah,
comfortable,
comfortable, but in an
but
uncomfortable
miserable,
way.
right?
Yeah,
Comfortable
yeah,
because I knew the style of misery that I was living with there, right? Yes.
exactly. And so putting yourself into different settings just to open you up to different information,
To
different,
literally hear something different other than what I was telling myself.
yeah. And so what sorts of things were you hearing?
I was hearing things like, you're capable and anybody can do this. And if I can do this, you can do this. And everybody deserves happiness and abundance and wealth. And I was hearing like crazy
Yeah.
stuff that I'd never heard before.
And then were you going, that's BS? Like,
For probably the first 6 months, yeah. But I didn't stop going. I kept going. And
yeah.
ultimately, what it led me to is I started a handful of network marketing businesses. So, like the social selling, multi level stuff. So
Yeah.
I started in a handful of those, which they ultimately are very focused on like personal development stuff and mindset stuff. And so then I was like,
Yes.
okay, I'm learning more about like, I can choose my thoughts. I mean, that probably took me 5 years before I actually thought, oh yeah, I can actually choose my thoughts. But before I was like, that's total crap. Yeah.
Yes.
So just like hearing so many different things, but also like continuing to take some sort of action in a forward moving way versus
Good.
sitting
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
that time, I don't remember if there were podcasts, but now I'm like, dang, if there were podcasts, I would have been like on that.
100%. I
Yeah.
love podcasts because do most of my learning from podcasts,
Yeah.
honestly. Just
Yeah,
go
I
and
almost
seek
forgot
them
that's
out.
what we were doing here was a podcast, but yeah, like literally, I
Yeah.
didn't like at that time. I don't think that was available. So what was available to me was like there was tons of conventions and seminars and things that were out there for free because those people were putting them on for free because on the back end they were selling a $35,000 package or something crazy like that,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And just being in an environment where there were people who didn't appear to feel miserable, which is funny, right? Because I was there. So
Yeah.
certainly in that room were more people who felt miserable as well. But at the time I was not considering that.
So I love that you talk about listening to your intuition because I feel that that is our biggest compass that we could ever use to know
Yeah.
which direction we should be heading in, even if the direction it's showing us doesn't make sense at the time. So here
Mm-hmm.
you are attending a load of conferences, getting all this information, still wondering what the heck is going to come out of all this.
Yep.
But what it's actually doing is exposing you in piecemeal to the same information over and over again. So validating that you are worthy, that you deserve to be here, that you have got something special, all of those things. And then I guess that leads you to a point where you can take the next bigger steps of actually dealing with some of the heavier trauma stuff you've been
Yes.
through. Your analogy? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because ultimately, where it led me is here in Dallas, Texas. Dr. Phil had started an emotional intelligence class of sorts, and so I started that class and learning from that methodology and just those principles and stuff and putting it to use. So it's not like you go in there and learn it. It's more of an experiential learning thing situation. So it's really hard. It's very deep. It's very emotional. And so, yeah, it led me to there. And from that place, that's where I decided that I wanted to be a coach and I wanted to help other people because I've now found some stability in my life. I've now found a sense of self. I've been able to connect with my physical body, my emotional body, my pain body. I've been able to heal some trauma. So I've been able to feel like I've made some leaps and jumps in my life. And naturally, I mean, I'm sure all coaches, I'm sure you run into this too, that people just naturally tell you everything and
Yes.
they want help, they want to do something, they don't know what to do, and they find them that they're talking to you. And I had a natural gift and a natural skill set around that, and from there that's what led me to start down the road of figuring out how do I actually help people, how do I get more trauma, foundations for me to help other people who have trauma and that kind of stuff. So yeah, ultimately walking into that very first real estate seminar is what got me to where I'm at right now.
Now, so let's talk about your coaching, Contessa, because you talk a lot about people needing peace, safety, and trust.
Mm-hmm.
Share with us why those attributes are so important in helping someone move in their grief and trauma.
Yeah, when you think about peace, safety, and trust, like when somebody goes through trauma, it's like those three things get just swept out from underneath them. They have no sense of peace. There's nowhere where they feel safe, and then the trust between themselves and other people is just completely demolished. So really, like peace, safety, and trust, when you think about it, like we're building a foundation for a house. It is not the concrete that is the foundation. It is literally the earth beneath the concrete that supports the concrete. It is so foundational and so key to just the human experience that is woven in every fabric of everything that we do. But if you've been through trauma or you're experiencing grief, it is just simply not present. And so establishing like we'll just talk about a sense of safety, for example,
Yes,
can be like just taking that earth that's beneath the concrete and giving it enough stability to support the concrete that the house is built on, right?
yeah.
Because if you do not have those things, yeah, I don't remember your question. I feel like I'm rambling on, but
Oh,
safety.
no, you're doing great because I was just talking about, you talk a lot about peace, safety, and trust. And the analogy that you're using of building the house is so, so good because what a lot of people don't realize is that they can talk about their stuff. They can talk about it till the cows come home.
Yeah.
However, what I've found, until somebody feels safe,
Mm-hmm.
especially, only then do you start to feel back and really get to those layers underneath, those
Yeah.
foundations
Yeah.
of what's happened in their life that's put them so off track.
Yeah, because ultimately, what most people are doing are just coping. They're using
Mm,
coping skills in order to manage their everyday life. But when you come in and you establish a sense of safety, then you can like stop some of those coping mechanisms because ultimately we realize that alcohol or food or drugs or
yeah.
sex or overindulgence in some way, shape, form, or fashion is not really sustainable, number one, or very
Mm,
healthy for our emotions or our physical body. And so, yeah, like when we talk about like safety, that really is the first place that I always start with everybody because it is so foundational that it even supports peace and trust, if you will. But like
yeah.
to be able to connect with a sense of safety. And most people seek that outside of themselves, right? Because we're dealing with trauma, we're dealing with grief. So it must be somewhere out here that I can't
Hmm.
see that is safe that I can go to. But really, a sense of safety is something that we build within ourselves that we then take out into the world so that we can dive deeper into the work and the stories and heal things and establish a sense of healing, if you will.
Yes. And some people feel extremely safe in their brokenness and so don't ever want to go past that or not ready to go past that. So often it would take something perhaps major again happening for them to be ready to shift that. So it's like you. I mean, look at, my goodness me, look at everything that you had been through. And it wasn't until you lost your gorgeous wee boy that the house came crumbling down on top of you. So it takes that, and it's okay, because I feel that people only make progress when they're ready, when they feel ready to start opening that door a crack, and then a little bit wider, and then a bit wider still. So yes, it's all coming from within there. Contessa, is this what you talk about in your signature Phoenix process?
Yeah, so my signature Phoenix process, I love that thing. I'm not gonna lie.
Phoenix rising from the ashes.
That's right.
When I read that, that's what I symbolize with. That's what I imagine myself to be. I'm a phoenix rising from the ashes.
Yes. So what we do in that process is we literally come up to the edge of the pit, right? And we establish our own sense of safety, because we have to take safety down with us, right? And like I was saying, like safety really kind of is like the core of the earth, if you will, in the foundation that we're building here. So we establish a sense of safety, and it's super easy, by the way. Like, you connect with your own physical experience, you connect with your body, connect with the sensations, you connect with what's happening in your physical body. Because most people, especially with trauma and grief, they are separate. Like, my emotions, who I am, my thinking body is separate from my physical body, right? That's called disassociation. And so it's important to establish safety is to come back into your body with your emotions, with your thoughts, everything, your feelings. And so we establish that, and then we literally dive in to really find that one piece of trauma that if we heal that, it's like a domino effect. It can heal the majority of the trauma at the same time without having to heal each individual event. And then we can rise up with peace and trust and healing and space and relief all at the same time, and take that out into our world. I'm sorry.
You could just see me smiling from ear to ear as you talk about this, because I can just understand.
I get a front row seat to watching women do this every single day, and to watch them come up out of that is like, fly away, like go soar into the skies. Yes, it's such a beautiful experience to not only one having done it for myself, but now to watch other women do it for themselves. I got the chills. It's such a wonderful experience.
And something else you mentioned, which I'm going to pick up on, because I know in traditional going to a counselor or a therapist or whoever you go to, people really shudder at having to retell their story over and over and over again, especially if you've been traumatized, because often you don't know the gaps. You just know the feeling and the overarching thing of what has happened to you. You don't know the details. So trying to talk about it is really stressful and traumatic in itself. But you talk about in this process, you don't have to do that. You can just very easily and simply just go and find that one piece of trauma that's pivotal to the rest.
Yes. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times that people come to me because they're sick of spending years and years just talking circles around themselves in therapy. And look, therapy has its place. I'm not going to knock it.
No, not at all.
Place. But when I think about it, like, we've got like a neck down approach and a neck up approach. Therapy is very much neck up. It's very cerebral. It's very thinking based. It's very like, let's talk about it. Most people who've been through trauma are overthinkers. So if we add thoughts to that, it just kind of like makes things worse, if you will, right?
Yes.
And people can spend years in therapy just talking in circles and talking without having any resolution or any like forward momentum, if you will.
Yeah.
And so this process really takes a neck down approach. So we really work on our nervous system, building safety within our bodies so that we can then think about the pieces that we need to think about. But we don't have to retell our whole entire story either at the same time, because that can
Yeah.
be re-traumatizing. Just to have to relive it enough to tell the story can be traumatic all in itself. So yeah,
Yes.
there's
Very
a whole
triggering.
process that we lay out that basically you can go in and identify that one trauma that just like a domino can knock down the majority. Like, and just to be clear, right? It's not a magic pill. It doesn't solve everything.
Oh, really?
There's no magic pills. Sorry.
Well, I've
But
certainly learned that.
yeah, but it does take the majority of it and it knocks it down so that you have just have pieces left to basically clean up, if you will.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It takes you into a space and a place where you can start to deal with the rest of it as and when you want to or are ready to do that.
Yeah,
Which
and
is,
it's kind of
yeah,
like one of those replicatable processes too. So once you do that, then you can just kind of like move on to the next thing and just repeat the process for that one, right? Or
yeah,
like we talked about before we hit the record button, crap
yeah.
never stops coming up. Like we're humans engaged in life, so crap will never stop coming up. So then you just take the
Yeah,
process and stuff that comes up, then you just repeat the process.
ain't that the truth? Hey, look, you started off by talking about the immense anger when you got put onto that phone call with the center and that anger that just welled up. Our emotions always want to tell us something. So,
Yes.
how do we learn to tap in and talk about our emotions to understand the fear which is often wrapped in them?
Oh my gosh, this is one of my mostest favorite things to do. So I'm debating right now whether to explain it or whether to invite you to it. What do you think?
I think you just go with what your heart says.
So my heart is leading me in your direction because I can explain the process, but to be able to hear the process in motion, I feel like has more value to it, right?
Yes.
So what is a tough emotion that you deal with?
Then for me, I've always, most of my life, struggled with perfectionism, which is not actually emotion per se, but it is in the fact that I have this overwhelming need to get things right, and that creates a stress within my body. So when
What is the emotion that comes up for you
the
when you don't
emotion
get
that
it right?
comes out is not good enough.
So when you
Yep.
feel not good enough,
Yep.
where does that feel? Where do you feel that physically in your body?
Where do I feel that physically? Yeah, makes me want to cry for a start. So my eyes start welling up, but I also like feel it. I feel it down in my abdomen. Like, yeah.
And so just settling there with your abdomen, what is the sensation that you feel associated with not good enough? Is it tight? Is it heavy? Is it hard? Is it constricted? Is it open? Is it free? Is it
It's
airy?
it's 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 like in turmoil. It's like it's going around and
Swirling?
around. It's swirling around. Yeah.
Okay, so just to help bring people into the process with us, basically what I'm inviting Helen to do, right, is to first connect with the experience of not feeling good enough. That experience, you feel it physically in your abdomen as a
Mm-hmm.
swirling sensation. So the
Mm-hmm.
question was is how do we feel our emotions and process those and deal with those in a way that helps us, that serves us so that we can heal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the first place to start is to get down to what you're feeling, what you're experiencing in your physical body. And for you, that's feeling not good enough, and that you feel that in your abdomen in a swirling sensation, right?
Yeah.
And so, what we're going to do is just take a nice deep breath into the abdomen and just feel that swirling motion. We're not trying to change it, we're not trying to make it something that it's not. We don't want to run from it, we're not fighting it. We're just acknowledging that that's what's happening. That's how you feel right. Can you feel that?
Yeah, I can feel that. This is a
So
bit more than what I bargained for. I thought I was going to be doing the work with you, not vice versa. Talk about being put on the spot.
Right.
It's great, though.
So just go down into your abdomen. It's okay. You're safe here, right? You're safe. People are going to hear this. And just breathe into that swirling motion where you feel not good enough. And what I'm going to invite you to do is just kind of like take your awareness, like shrink yourself down to a miniature version and place yourself inside the abdomen where that swirling motion is. And let me know when you can see that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Is there anything in here that you can see, any colors or shapes, or does it look like anywhere or anything?
So I get flashes of green and brown and loads of darkness.
So you just stay right there, and just to bring everybody with us. So when you have this sensation, this physical experience in your body, it will take on a shape. It'll take on a color. It'll take on just darkness or blackness or whiteness. It will look like something to you that resonates with you. So just breathe into this space, and we're going to ask it a couple of questions. Let me know when you're ready for that.
Yep, go.
What is this space that's swirling that has flashes of green and brown and darkness? What does it want?
It wants to be not empty. It wants the color to come through. It wants to be seen. Yeah.
Thank you. Take a nice deep breath. And this space that's swirling here in your abdomen that wants to be seen, just connecting with it, letting it come up with the answer. What is its purpose for Helen? How does it serve Helen? When it shows up and it's swirly, how does it serve Helen?
Shows me and tells me that I'm in situations that I'm not comfortable with, I'm not happy with, and that I need my voice to be heard, and I need people to see me.
Yeah, so if I heard you correctly, they're swirly, not good enough, that your job is to get Helen's attention so she knows that this place or thing or experience is not right for her.
Yes.
Yeah. So would you say your job for Helen is to protect her?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you. You've done a really great job. Helen's here with us today, so you've done a great job. Helen, take a nice deep breath. I'm just going to invite you to just hold this experience. Just give it space. We're not trying to change it. We're not trying to make it something that it's not. We're not running from it. We're not going to numb out from it. We're not going to buffer from it. It just is. And just recognize that the awareness came to you today, that this swirling motion that you feel in your abdomen that's associated with not good enough, it just wants to be seen. And how it serves you is it protects you. And when you're ready, you can come back to us.
Yeah.
So while you're kind of coming down from that, I'm just going to bring everybody again up to where we are. So the question again was, how do we take our emotions and use them to heal? So we connect with our experience in our physical body, and then we listen to the emotion that's coming up to us. We interact with it. It has a message. It has wisdom for us. Most emotions and feelings are here to serve us in some way, shape, form, or fashion, usually to protect us, to keep us safe, to get our attention, right? And it has a want and a need as well, and it has wisdom for us as well. And so we take that wisdom because it is a part of you. It's not something that is going to go away. It is a part of who you are, and it's a part of your human experience. And so now we can use that information and heal and use it to heal, because now anytime that swirling motion comes up, or you get the thought, or you feel like you're not good enough, then you can recall, okay, this part of me just wants to be seen. So I'm going to see this part of me. I'm going to sit with this part of me instead of doing like old coping mechanisms, and recognize it's just trying to protect me. And instead of it protecting me, I can take charge and create safety for this part of me, that I will take care of it to keep it safe versus it feeling like it needs to keep me safe from here on out. So it's like
That's
reversing
really
the
cool.
role, if you will.
So what you're talking about is that the emotions that we've experienced, perhaps over our lifetime through all the different things we've been through, what we do is implement protective measures to keep us safe, but they don't always serve us well later in life.
They may keep us safe by disconnecting us from the world around us or pushing us in a way to give into desires like eating 5 pieces of chocolate cake instead of just one, or a whole bag of
Yes.
M&Ms versus just a handful, right?
Yeah.
I'm revealing my own coping skills here.
Yeah, that's what that self-sabotage is, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that was pretty powerful. Wasn't expecting that. But it's great because I feel like, having gone through that exercise ourselves between us and people being able to hear that, hopefully then they can start to connect.
Yeah, and
With
hopefully there was enough space in there where, they can do the process on their own, right? Like I was asking you for the questions, but somebody can insert their own answers. The questions are the same, right? Like, what is a difficult emotion that you deal with? Where do you physically feel that? What does it feel like sensationally? Then go in there and what do you see and what does it want and what's its purpose for you? So the process is the same no matter who is going through that.
Oh, so good, so good.
When it comes to grief, like most people sit in sadness for a really long time, right? And
Yes.
so by connecting to sadness and the sensational feeling of sadness, where it's at in your body, what it wants, what's its purpose for you, then you can move through grief a little bit more smoothly, if you will,
Yes.
just by connecting with sadness and holding hands and walking side by side through grief versus fighting sadness or trying to get rid of sadness. Because that's what I find most people do with grief. They just want to get rid of it. They just want to be done with it. But really, we just need to hold hands with it and walk through it together.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love the way you describe that and what you say about grief because it is exactly that. And people need to feel that huge sadness, from losing someone they love very much and deal with it and not try to damper it down or turn it into something that they're not ready to turn it into. It's
Right.
really exactly
Yes.
about giving yourself the space and time to walk with it and walk alongside of it. Oh, how beautiful. Oh, okay. Well, I'm taking a deep breath here. So you also, yes, you also use the example of people doing fireworks and why these are so very good. I don't know of many people that wouldn't have some type of fear around doing a firewalk, walking across hot coals. So can you talk through the benefits that people are going to receive from going through that whole process as well?
Yeah, first, firewalking is really just a metaphor for how you engage with life. As soon as you step up to the line, to be able to walk down the line, then everything about how you interact with life, you are basically confronted with. If you interact with life in a fearful way or hesitant way, or if you want to try to talk yourself out of it, run from it, right? Like how you engage with life is how you step up to the coals.
That's gold.
And so the benefit that you get is what you get to go inside of yourself and actually experience on a real level what it takes from you in order to take that first step. The first step's always the hardest. Once you take the first step, then you're like, oh, this isn't that bad. Because ultimately walking on fire is just like walking on hot popcorn. That's exactly how it feels. As long as you're with a trained, right, like somebody who does it right and knows how to build in all the safety protocol. But basically it's that first step. So you get to feel inside of yourself and experience on a real, genuine level what it takes to move forward past fear, past hesitancy, past resistance, past any old ways that you used to cope, run, hide, isolate. Like you get to feel that on a real level. And when literally you're taking 3 or 4 steps and you're off of the fire and then you're done. And just the celebration that comes after that really is beautiful to watch people on the other side. You can literally see like when somebody starts on the side, when they're facing the fire, and then they go through what it takes to get into a proper state to walk across the fire. And then once they take the first step and then they make it to the other side, sometimes people look like a completely different color because they've been able
Wow.
to like get to a different place in themselves that they'd never accessed before. And once you access it, you can't unknow that. You can't go
It's
backwards.
life-changing stuff, isn't it?
Yes, it's so awesome. It is so awesome. I walked on fire close to 500 times now, and every time it is exhilarating because it's just a constant reminder of like, okay, this is what I can work on. And I do have this skill set now on board. It's easier for me sometimes. Sometimes it's a little bit harder. It's kind of like the healing, right?
Yeah.
Crap never stops coming up. So, you step up to the fire one day and it may require something different of you than the next day. I mean, I used to go across the fire with a super masculine energy. And one day I stepped up to the fire and I'm like, this isn't working for me anymore. And I had to get more soft and more subtle and tap into more of a feminine and nurturing energy to walk across the fire. So it's really awesome stuff.
I bet your husband loved that.
He
I
does. Yeah.
bet, yes, because often that's what we do, we're survivors, so we're so
Mm-hmm.
tough and we're being so strong
Yep.
that we forget to tap into that beautiful
The
feminine energy
softness.
within, the
Yeah.
softness. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful. And I can just see this being so transforming in so many different ways. And like
Yeah.
you say, every time you do it, doesn't matter how many times, something different can come
You
up
get
for
something
you.
different. Just like if you read a book 100 times, you see something different. So you learn something
Yes.
different, right? It's the same thing, stepping up to the fire every single time.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, I love this. Now, I have to ask though, have you ever had any burns on your feet?
I haven't had
On
any.
the soles?
I
What?
have not. I have had participants who've gotten some blisters. So ultimately, when you get burned, what happens is it looks like a blister. A blister is
Mhm.
kind of like something that you would get if you wore brand new shoes that were too tight. So that's ultimately like the worst case scenario. But yeah.
Okay. I couldn't resist it.
No, it's okay. There's actually a lot of safety built into the process itself, to the
Yes.
kind of wood that we choose, to how long we burn the wood before we lay them out for people to walk on. Like there's a lot of that goes into
Oh, so it's not the coal that you just go down to the shop and buy and
it. No.
set up.
And
That's
they're
good
not
to
literally on fire when you walk across them, right? But they are about 1200 degrees.
know. Oh, good. I'm glad we clarified that. Hey, something else I want to talk with you about is judgment, because I feel that in this lifetime, we are often feeling like we're being judged on so many different levels and probably harshest of all, by ourselves. So let's talk about judgment, and especially in relation to grief, like, that
Oh gosh.
person who can't get themselves off the couch. They feel like they're just numbing themselves out, binge watching TV, and then feeling guilty, and then feeling like they're going to be judged for doing that. Let's just talk judgment.
Yeah. So real quick, I'm just going to start off with the bad news.
Okay.
Yep. There's probably somebody who's judging you.
Mm.
There will
Yeah.
always be somebody out there who judges you. It's not your problem. Projection is perception. So people often see in us what they have in them. So what I mean by that, like, for example, if somebody's judging you for taking too long to grieve, and maybe you're at home and binge watching TV all day long, and somebody judges you for that. Ultimately, that judgment isn't about you. That's about that they probably self-reflect that they indulge too much in watching TV.
So that's saying more about them than it is about you.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And so really, like, we can just let that go and just
Mhm.
acknowledge that, if a human is projecting judgment onto you, then that says more about them than it says about you, and just let them be. We don't need to do anything with that right? We don't need to change that. They're not coming to us for help or anything. Just let it go and let them be. So, but I like what you said, right? Because if we feel judgment from others, really what we're feeling is judgment from ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, it's one of those indulgent emotions. So we have emotions that we indulge in, like guilt and shame and fear that come up a lot. And what I mean by indulgent is we oftentimes, like, I think we talked about this a little bit before, like, I was comfortable in the type of misery that I was living in when I was
Yes.
staying at home, right? And so I was indulging in the emotion of misery.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are judging yourself, then basically you are indulging in the emotion of judgment. And that means that you're using judgment as a weapon instead of as a vehicle. So
Yeah.
you've weaponized judgment against yourself, most likely to beat yourself up. That's what most people, what I run into when they're judging themselves, they're beating themselves up. And they do it because they know how they will feel. They know what to expect, right? Even though people don't think that it serves them, right? We're talking about judgment as an emotion. You do the same process that we just did with you. You go into judgment. It has wisdom, but usually people are using it to weaponize it against themselves because they think they deserve to feel bad. They don't deserve anything good. Maybe they feel guilty and they're beating themselves up for what they feel guilty about, or they feel shameful. And just for the record, the difference between guilt and shame: guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I am bad.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so judgment is a way to maintain a sense of oppression over yourself and indulging in this emotion in a way that weaponizes it against you.
Yeah.
And so the way through that is literally the process that we just did, is to sit with judgment, listen to judgment. Judgment has a want. Judgment also has a purpose. It serves you in some way, most likely that you are not aware of at the moment.
Yeah.
But get to know judgment. Hold judgment's hands. Welcome judgment in. Because when you sit with judgment and you listen to judgment, you see judgment. Judgment feels welcome, right? And it doesn't have to like hit you in the head or beat you up or knock you over. Judgment can show up whenever it's a vehicle, whenever you maybe do need to feel guilty because you robbed a bank.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And it's
I don't
about
know if I
being
answered
kind.
the question or
Well,
not.
you do. Yeah, you did. I think it's about recognizing who owns it. You know, if
Right?
somebody's judging you for what you're doing, you don't
Yes.
own that. The other person owns that. And
Yep.
any judgment you have yourself, then,
Yep.
take a deeper look at that. And is that something that you're feeling guilty about? Is that why you're judging yourself? Because you know that the way you've been brought up is that you shouldn't sit on the couch and just binge watch TV.
Right. Yeah.
Or
Or
is
you
it
shouldn't be
something,
angry or
yes,
yeah.
that should. Oh my,
Mhm.
shouldn't,
Yes.
that word.
Yes.
But it's about giving yourself the grace to say, actually, I can't deal with everything going on just at the moment. So I just need to go into la la land for a bit. And
Yeah.
that's going to be okay because I know that I'll pull myself out of it down the line.
Yeah.
And so just relax into it and allow yourself to do it. And then you'll know when it's time to get up,
Yeah.
because you're
I
either
call it
hungry or,
indulgent emotions, right? Because we indulge in it because oftentimes we spend a lot of time fighting it or pretending or justifying it instead of just embracing
yes,
it and sit with it. Because when you just sit with your emotion, then it doesn't last as long.
yes, yes. I've got loads more questions to ask you, but I know that we've just been romping through the time. Have you got a few more minutes?
Yes. We've covered a lot of
Fantastic.
ground for sure.
Yeah. So I just want to sort of, before we sort of start winding it up, I just want to know two things. The first is about the importance of self healing, because I personally am a great believer in self healing, like giving people the tools so that they can go on to heal themselves rather than depending on others. So, is this how you see self healing as well and the importance of that?
Yeah, I mean, often, if we talk about like what we were talking about earlier about therapy and spending years of just agonizing over just talking in circles, right? Like we're basically in that scenario placing our healing in someone else's hands. And that's why people get frustrated, because they end up just talking in circles and not really going anywhere. But when you find a good therapist or a good coach who actually gives you the tools to go out and practice so that you can heal yourself, then you're empowered and you're more in charge of what goes on in your life and the direction that you're taking, instead of waiting for something outside of you to do it for you. Yes, I'm on board. Yes.
Beautiful. Great answer. Is there anything specific, Contessa, to people deep in grief that you've seen that may keep them stuck, or not realize that healing doesn't mean letting go of their loved one and how much they love and miss them, that it's an important component to be the survivor left behind and to learn to live well? I think I jumbled that up a wee bit, but do you get the essence of what I'm trying to say?
I think what I hear you asking is, like, how does healing help somebody grieve, but also like hold on to their loved ones, essentially?
Yes, because people get torn between the two. Like, I can't be happy because that means I didn't love that person enough. And
or I have to hold on to sadness as a way to maintain connected to my loved one who's not here with me anymore. Or I have to hold on to anger to stay connected, right?
Yes.
So let's just define connection. Connection, whether it is, what's the word I'm looking for here, Helen? Connection, whether it's in the afterlife or in the present life.
I don't think it matters, actually, honestly. Because
when I think about connection, it's just a relationship that we have with somebody else. And that connection is not dependent on life.
No.
We're connected to the trees. I love that beautiful tree behind you. We're connected to trees, to birds, to animals, right? Like, we're connected to the ground, to the earth, to the space, to the universe, right? The connection is just simply being in relationship with someone or something. That does not require life. And so when you think about what connection really means, then oftentimes when we think about a healthy connection, sadness, anger, despair, frustration, those don't make for a healthy connection, do they?
No.
No, they don't. So when we think about, number one, connection is not dependent on life, and also that negative emotions do not make for a good connection, then really the best way to maintain a connection with your loved one, whether they are living or not living, is to heal yourself so that you have a steady, stable foundation, so that you can have positive, healthy, effective emotions and you're moving forward with life. That's the best way to maintain a connection with your loved one, especially when they're no longer here with us.
What a great answer. That's superb. Thank you for sharing that in that way. That's really lovely.
I think that's probably the most succinct way I've ever put it, but yes.
Yeah, it was perfect. Oh, I was sitting there going, wow, this is good. Hey, and I'm going to slip in a last question. How has what you've been through affected your kids? Because you've got teens now, right? And they know what you've been through in your past, and now they see what you were doing. So what's the impact that this whole journey you've been on has had on them?
Yeah, it's a really great question, because I just sent my first to college. My second one is getting ready to go to college in August, and what I am seeing from them is they have stable emotions. They come to me about anything. We have a very open, solid, connected, stable relationship. And as a result, they're creating that similar relationship with other people around them. And like I tell them all the time, just like I told you before we started, I'm an open book. You can ask me anything. I've shared my story with them. They've read my story in my book, and I hide nothing from them. And as a result, they don't feel the need to hide anything from me. So we have a really great relationship. And because of that, they're going out and creating great relationships for themselves. They know what healthy relationships look like. They know how to stand up for themselves, how to use their own voice. So yeah, my kids are awesome. I know I'm partial, but
no, that's exactly what I wanted people to hear, because sometimes people hold up saying, oh, I don't want to burden my children with this. However, what your children do is they pick up on all the signals, your body language, your tone of voice, your actions, everything. They pick up on everything. And so
Yeah.
sometimes you owe it to them just to be straight up and say,
Just to
you know
be straight.
what? I am like I am because
This is what
this
I've been
is what's
through.
happened to. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my best to change that. So I'm not going to react in that way going forward. But
Yeah.
please don't take that personally. And I
Yes, I've
think
said
that,
sorry a lot based on how I was reacting, based on just dealing with trauma or that I was coping in the moment. I've apologized a lot for that.
me
Yeah.
too. I did that with my daughter endlessly. I made so many mistakes
We all do.
and poor
We all do.
choices but 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 do you know what, because I was so open and honest
Yeah.
and didn't burden her with it, I apologized to her a lot.
Mhm.
We ended up with the relationship that you've just described that you have
Yeah.
with your children, and that's what I want people to see, is
Yeah.
that just because you're carrying all this stuff, you can have brilliant relationships with your children,
With
with
your
your
kids.
partners, with your
Yeah.
extended family, with whoever, because you are open to facing it and being honest about it. So I think that's great. Okay, what's the best thing that's happened to you so far today?
I was going to say today or in my whole life, because that would be a big
No,
question.
today. Because I've got.
Yeah, no, today I feel like there's just been this safe space between us to just like have a conversation that I think is going to be valuable for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, it's been so much more than what I expected, and I'm so grateful to you for that.
My favorite part
What?
is when you were willing and vulnerable to go into the process, not knowing anything about the process. You're
Yeah, you
showing you're
would
brave,
you.
Helen. You're showing you're brave.
Yeah, well, I've learned that, I would just give things a go, and now, which has been beautiful. That's a freedom of letting go, and you just go through it, and what will be, will be.
It's true. True
And
story.
often there are very good benefits at the other side of it, which you
Right.
show me. Okay, what is the thing that you're most grateful for?
I am grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for healing. I'm grateful for a lot of things. I'm grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for lungs that can take in oxygen and a heart that beats without me even having to ask it to. I'm grateful for a lot.
Beautiful, beautiful. And when you're having moments in your day that are not going well at all, what's your go-to? What do you pivot to pull yourself out of that?
So this is going to be counterintuitive, but I don't. I sit with it. I embrace it.
Great.
I hold it. I welcome it. I take a break if I need to. I don't force myself in any way, shape, form, or fashion to need to move on or get up or anything. Like, I take that as an indicator that it's time for me to connect with that part of me that is resistant or hesitant or has a case of the I don't want us.
Oh, Contessa, that is absolutely fantastic. I like that. Yes, just sitting in it, sitting with it. Yeah.
Just sit with it.
Okay. Wow. This is I mentioned earlier, has just been beautiful. The connection that we've had together, and just being able to chat and explore, a number of different things. We've really got through a huge
A lot.
amount today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
We
told you
can
it was
go
going
on
to
and
be
cry.
busy, and I still have a stack of questions we haven't even gone to. But I want to thank you so very, very much for giving up your time, for sharing with us your own journey and your learnings from that, and your vulnerability to share that at its core, and to just give us techniques and tools that we can embrace and look to for healing our own selves in whatever way we may need to do that. And it has been an absolute privilege to meet you and spend this time with you. Thank you, Contessa.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been all my honor, Helen. Thank you so much.
Okay, and as always, we will have all your links and information in the episode notes so people know where to go and find you, find out more about you if they're interested in that fire walk.
Yeah.
Maybe not from New Zealand. They might have to do a bit of tripping to do that, but definitely we'll have all that info in the notes. And yeah, we look forward to sharing that with everyone. And if you're listening in today, thank you for doing so. It's been a pleasure to have you with us, joining us. Thank you. Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. Let me know how I'm doing, or if there's a topic you'd like covered, by clicking on the Healing to Be You Gmail link or going to the Healing to Be You website. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button and please share if you know of someone who could benefit from this episode. Until next time, be kind to you and take good care.